My name is Jim Palmer. I am the technical service manager. And I'll give you a little bit of, give you a little bit of my history. You saw in the picture where we built a building next door in 1984. Well, at that time I was a PBX repairman for AT&T, and I put the PBX in all the phones in that building. And during the course of that time, I began to know a lot of the people at Horton, the president and the chief engineer and all that. And I really thought that what they were doing here was gee whiz. And I hung out a lot just looking at what they did and learning and befriending the people. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot cooler than telephones. And so in 1983, AT&T divested, and I ended up getting laid off. So I knew a guy that was the president of the company. I thought it'd be nice to have a letter of reference from him. So I went and asked Lou for a letter of reference so I could get another job. He said, well, what if I just give you a job? And so I came to work here in 1985. And predominantly I was involved in the implementation of the automatic security revolver and the automatic revolver. And for the first 10 years I was here, I traveled over 1 million miles, going out all over the place, putting in these revolving doors. When you look at that manual, the manuals that you got there, everything that's in there is either my content or my structure. We've got some excellent guys that, to do the illustrations and all that, but everything in there is stuff that, has been developed during my tenure here at Horton. And as a result of that, I've become kind of the first line of defense for the electronic part of the system. John and John are both really good and they're up to speed, but for whatever reason, I've kind of developed a relationship with the chief engineers, and we work back and forth. I talk to them daily, and why don't you crank up the cave? I'll show you where I live. So this is where I live. Here's a revolving door control that I've got set up so I can talk to you if you have a problem. There's the control. And then if you look down on the floor, there's my gearbox so I can simulate door movement. And then up here I've got a 4700 slide door. That's a 2003 that I've rigged up to be both belt and linear drive. This is a 7000 operator with a surface with a sensor monitor board on it. There's a sensor monitoring board. Here's a 2150 with a sensor monitoring board on it. And then here's the 3150 control that I've got sitting there, and it's actually connected to the header on the top. That's the way I see it. It's my old guy eyewear. Yeah. And then I'm also kind of interested in heavy equipment. I've got all those models. Never driven one, but I can dream. There's my hat that when I shot my first straight. Here's my starting fluid. And there's my best friend, and my wife's there too. There's another picture of my bitter half. And I really mean that is my main job. Here's the stuff that I use to program the different controls and stuff. I've got, in my office door, I've got a 7000 with a power assist close on it. And then over here is just a bunch of circuit boards that I've collected. So if I'm talking to somebody about something, I can pick it up and say, no, it's the little resistor right next to the capacitor.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I'm going to take just a minute to talk to you about tech calls and getting help. The only reason I have a job is to help you guys make our stuff work and to get you on and off the job in a timely manner. I don't want anybody getting bogged down and being afraid to ask a silly question or something like that, to where they just flounder for an hour. Their boss is on them, why haven't you left the job? In the back of all your manuals, I've put a business card. Business card has my direct line. That's how I want y'all to call me. I don't want you going through the operator. I don't want you going through customer care, although they're a fantastic group. If you've got a problem, I want you to pick up the phone and call me. It will ring directly at my station. I cover the lunch hour most times from 11:30 to 12:30 Central Standard Time. If you call after that time, you may get a voicemail telling you to go to John or John. But it's my intention to, to be there. I also really pride myself for calling people back. And I log, when you leave me a voicemail, I log it, when I come back, so-and-so called, I called him back, he didn't answer, whatever, and I put a resolution. And so I make it a point to take very good care of that. When you hear my voicemail, it's going to say, you reached Jim Palmer's voicemail. I'm in the office today, but I can't take your phone. Leave me a message and I'll call you back. Now, typically what happens is a guy calls in and says, yeah, this is Daryl. I need you to call me on 452. And you can't hear it. And so I know that Daryl works for Automated Doorways, so I have to call his office and track him down, trying to get to it. If you dial me direct, I'll have a caller ID on it, and I can call you back. So that's going to be helpful too. If you would leave me rather than just call me back. So call me back. I just need to know block. And then if I'm just before going to a meeting, and I know I can take care of your call in 5 minutes, you get a call right then. If I'm undecided as to whether or not I'm going to be able to handle it, in a timely manner, then I'm probably going to, go to my meeting or do whatever it is, and then call you back. So give me some information so that I can help you. The other thing, and John Kringle is a real stickler on this, and I think he's right, is when you call me, I want you to have your manual in your hand. I wrote the manual, but I still pull it out when I'm talking to somebody because I can't remember what I wrote. I'm 70 years old and, a lot of that's past. So have your manual in your hand. And I notice that a lot of people, when I ask them about a meter, they got to go to the truck and get it or whatever. Unless your meter's the size of a bread box, I'd encourage you to take it to the job with you, because if you have it, you won't need it. But if you don't have it, it's on the truck 6 blocks away, then the first question I'm going to ask, we're going to need a meter to proceed. Now, basic electricity. It takes a pretty robust guy or girl to take a 12-foot header out of the truck, stand it up, glaze it, get it all ready to go. And, so that's kind of, I'm a gearhead, the other two guys here are gearheads too. And so we can monkey it, monkey see, monkey do it, pretty much by looking at it and figure out what needs to happen. So 99% of the calls that I get are electronic calls. So the challenge for me over the years has been, how do you explain to something that is somebody who is a visual person, something that you can't see? You can't see electricity. You can detect it with a meter, but you can't see it. So we do pretty much everything on the board level. You're going to change a control. You're going to change a motor, but you're not going to be asked to change a capacitor or resistor or do anything like that. The other thing that we've tried to do over the years is we've tried to do things logically and maintain a convention. Anybody that's worked on a 2150 has got a leg up going on a 3150 because it's still set, reset, up, down, all your, and we do that, for continuity. So when I'm trying to explain to a guy electricity, the best way that I've found to do it is something that you can see, which is water. So this, very crude, but it gets the point across. The water in the tank represents the current that's available to do the work. The higher the tower, the greater the pressure. Pressure and voltage are the same thing. So you've got all this potential up here in the water tower, and you're wanting to drive this wheel. So it goes down a pipe, and then it goes through a little valve that controls the flow. So if you just connected our 120 volts of motor voltage to a motor, the door's going to slam open and break the glass, and you're going to be out of business. So we use our control to control the flow of the water, which is actually the gallons and amps. By changing that valve, you can change how fast the water wheel runs. Let's go to the next slide, John. So, power available in homes and business is great for lights, refrigerators, and all that sort of stuff. But we, for a good reason, use DC motors, and all of the solid state digital circuits at Horton use DC because it just doesn't, you can't do the kind of things with AC that you do with DC. Our motors are rated for 40 volts DC, and so we need a DC supply rated for about 100 volts DC so that we can overdrive it. All of the sensors, locks, and other peripherals need a 24 volt DC, so that's our low voltage target. A lot of people, I get a lot of calls from people that don't realize that there's two different circuits in our controls. We have the 24 volt that does the display, the LEDs, the sensors and all that sort of stuff, but then to drive that motor, we've got to have a heftier power supply. It's a 90 volt motor, so we need about 100 volt power supply. The lower voltage, the stuff that we run the digital stuff with, the 3.3, the 5 volts, and the 17, is all taken off of the 24 volts with DC regulators. That's how we get that. Go ahead, John. So this is, typical Horton power supply. You've got your 100, got my little, no, I've got one. Improperly prepared. So this is your 120 volts coming in from the building, and it goes through the F1 fuse, and this is a primary transformer. All of these secondary windings have inducted voltage. It's inducted off of this primary winding. So the 24 volt AC is a secondary winding. It's a 24 volt on 2150s and 4190s. The new 3150 is a 19 volts, and we'll get into the reason for that in a little bit. And the 3150 also doesn't have a fuse. It's got what's called a PTC, but all of them have a 90 volt motor supply and an F3 fuse. Go ahead, John. This is kind of a crude animation. I took it off the internet, but I think we can see what we're trying to see. This is your AC supply. I think I actually have here's a bridge rectifier. I'm going to pass it around. And you've got 24 volts coming in from the transformer on these corners. And then you've got a system of 4 diodes, 2 of them going each direction, which, go ahead and press the play, if you can. It should start, yeah. Let's see how you're going from plus to minus, and how the diodes, a diode passes DC current one way and blocks it the other. So every time your AC goes up and down, it's changing the polarity. And so this bridge is what actually delivers the DC voltage on the output of that bridge rectifier. Go to the next one, John. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. This is a 90 volt AC sine wave. And you'll see that, the thing takes off and it goes up to about 90 volts. Actually, it goes to 120, which is a 90 volt RMS. And then it passes 0 and goes back the other way. And that's what we put into it. What we get out of the rectifier, now we've got all of these bumps going the same direction. And so you see this. And now instead of having it passing every 60 times a second, this becomes 120 pulses per second. And it's pretty smooth already. So what we do then is we tie it to a great big capacitor that filters out all of this stuff in here and gives you kind of a rectified 90 volt, that should be DC there, but it gives you like a filtered and rectified 90 volt DC, and it's got little ripples in it, but it doesn't really amount to anything. Next slide. So anybody that's worked on our stuff for any time at all, you look at what we call 24 volts and you put a meter on it and it's going to be 30, 31, somewhere around in there. People always want to know why that is. The reason for that has to do with the root mean square. And what that means is you've got a cycle that even though it's a 24 volt root mean square, it actually goes up to about 32 volts, goes up over that. And so when we filter it and rectify and filter it, now we've caught all of these things at the, up at the peak. And so now instead of having 24 volts, you've got 30, 31 or 32. So part of the reason that we do that is if we have 27 to 32 volts, we're able to drive our chargers for our power fail devices. And the sensor people have kind of caught on to what's going on. They always put regulators in their equipment that is good for 40 volts so that we don't have an issue. The only time we do have a problem is there's been a small number of peripheral devices such as mortar strikes that if they're held open for a long period of time and they're not rated for continuous duty and whatever, we can have an issue there. And then also the 3150, we're going to have a 19 volt AC and we'll have a true 24 volt DC. We made that change, knowing that we were going to have some issues. One of the things is we can't deliver you right now a 3150 for a power fail open or a power fail closed device, but we've already got it. It's designed, it's under test, and we're getting under production. But if you were to order a power fail open or power fail closed device, we'd have to send it to you as a 2150 with a sensor monitoring board. Go ahead, John.
That's the last one.
Okay.